Runnin' with the Devil, a rock and roll adventure. Part 18. Wakey. Wakey, sleepyhead, I barely heard Stacy say, as I felt what I could only assume was water being thrown at me. Wakey, wakey, she said again, as another barrage of water slammed into my face. I shook my head back and forth, and blinked my eyes, in an attempt to shake the water from them. I opened my eyes to see Stacy sitting across from me, and Tony sitting next to her, on her left. Between us was a large metal table, with 3 small styrofoam cups on it. Positioned just to my left, on the edge of the table, was a black desk lamp, its light shining directly on the side of my face. "There you are. Hi. Did you have a good nap?" Stacy said, in that same demented Valley Girl voice. I then attempted to raise my right arm, to shield my eyes from the light. I quickly realized that not only my right arm, but my left arm, both my legs, and my torso were duct taped to an old wooden chair. The chair resembled an old electric chair. For all I know, it could have been. "Anyway, why are you doing this to me? Let me go," I screamed, as I wiggled violently in the chair, which began tilting left and right. "Careful now," Stacy said. "You don't want to fall and bump your head, now, do you?" I stopped wiggling in the chair. "What do you want?" I asked aggressively. "I want you to answer my questions," Stacy yelled. "Turn off this fucking light, and I'll answer your fucking questions," I yelled back at her. "I'm not gonna tell you again, kid. Watch your mouth," Tony said aggressively. "Tony," Stacy yelled, "don't be mean to our guest, say you're sorry." Tony gave her an "I hate you" look. "I'm sorry, kid," Tony mumbled. Stacy then cleared her throat, and looked at Tony once again, tilting her head to the side. "I'm sorry, Mike," he said sarcastically. "That's better," Stacy said. "Now, turn off the lamp, and hit the switch for the overhead light." "Okay," Tony said, like a kid to his parent. What the fuck is up with these two, I thought. Tony then got up, unplugged the lamp, put it on the ground, and hit the light switch on the wall, next to the door, then sat back down. The overhead light came on, flickering and buzzing at the same time. As it did, I could somewhat see the room, which was rather large. The walls were made of cinder blocks, painted dark gray, the floor was made of concrete, and the ceiling consisted of large light gray tiles held together by a black metal frame. There was a large mirror mounted on the wall to my right, and a dark gray door behind Tony and Stacy. The room smelled like foot sweat and urine, and looked like an interrogation room, only creepier. I had no idea of how long I'd been out, so I took a look at my arm. The number was still 1995. It couldn't have been that long, I thought. It's still the same day. "Okay," Stacy said, in a twisted game show host voice. "Contestant number 1, for 10 points. First question. If a plane crashes on a mountain, where do you bury the survivors?" I just stared at her. "What? Nowhere. You don't bury survivors," I replied, in a what the fuck tone. "What is wrong with you? You used to be a cop, and you hung out with a priest. For God's sake," I said to the both of them. "Father Thomas is dead," Tony said sadly. 3 punks killed him last Halloween. He paid me to assist him during exorcisms. After he died, I needed a new source of income, so Stacy's paying me to help her. On a mall cop's salary, I said. "What does your wife think about all this?" I asked. "She's a cross-country truck driver. She has no idea what's going on." "Shut up. The both of you, shut up," Stacy screamed, then completely lost her mind. While sitting in her chair, she began stomping her feet, hitting herself on the side of her head, and screaming, "Ard," throwing a complete temper tantrum. It was at that point that I decided to update my previous note to self. Cute girls aren't just fucking crazy, they are extremely fucking crazy. Anyway, she then stood up quickly, slamming both hands on the table, knocking the cups over, spilling the water from the 3rd cup. She then moved her hands to the side of the table, and pushed it across the room, almost knocking Tony out of his chair. It slammed into the wall, and shook the mirror. She then stepped forward, reached behind her back, with her right hand, and produced a small handgun, and pointed it directly in my face. I nearly pissed myself. Do you want to know why I sold my soul to be a cop? And oh yeah, by the way, I lied. I meant to sell my soul. It was the only way I was ever going to be a cop. You see, I applied to the police academy 3 times. 3 different times. And I passed everything, aced it all. Except the psych evaluation. They said I was manic depressant, with psychotic and homicidal tendencies. "Do I look psychotic to you?" she said. I thought to myself, yeah. But I said, "No, not at all." "Good answer," she said. "Ding ding dinged, survey says." She paused slightly, looked up at the ceiling, back down at me, then screamed, "Now, tell me about your friends. Tell me, or I'll blow your fucking head off." "Okay, Okay, I said nervously. They made a deal. With who? Stacy asked, as she moved the gun closer to my face. Stacy. Stop, Tony yelled. Shut up, you idiot, Stacy screamed. Suddenly, the overhead light started to flash, like a strobe light on steroids, and the desk lamp as well. You know, the one Tony unplugged. After about 30 seconds, the lamp stopped flashing, and went out. The overhead light shined dimly from above. Anyway, gray smoke began pouring into the room, from underneath the door, and from behind the mirror. What the fuck? Stacy screamed, as she and Tony began to cough violently. The smoke didn't affect me at all, I just sat there. Once the smoke had completely engulfed the room, it began to, well, for lack of a better term, suck itself back under the door, and back behind the mirror, leaving behind one thing. Standing on the table, dressed in his all-red three-piece suit, complete with his cigar, was none other than Bob. Ta-da, Bob said, presenting himself. What do we have here? Bob said. A torture party, and no one invited me. I am hurt. Who the fuck are you? Tony yelled, as he stood up. Bob turned around nonchalantly and said, sit down and shut your mouth, then snapped his fingers. Tony flew back hard into his chair, almost knocking it over. His mouth was completely gone, no lips, no teeth, nothing. Nothing but a piece of flesh where his mouth should have been. Bob then turned to Stacy, who had ducked down behind me, holding the gun to my head. Oh, you will soon be mine, I see. Well, not for 37 days, but soon, Bob said to Stacy. What are you babbling about? She asked. The number on your arm, Bob replied. You can see it? Stacy asked. Of course, dear, I am the one who put it there, he stated. Who are you? Stacy asked. Mr. Hardsell, if you would be so kind, Bob said. Oh, that's Bob, I said, the guy from the police station. His name is Robert Bells, one L with a Z. He tells everyone to call him Bob. If you reverse the names, it becomes Bells Bob. B-L-Z, Bob. Beelzebub, he's the devil. The devil, she said excitedly, let's make a deal. I love that show, I remember watching it with my mom, when I was younger. Anyway, oh, I'm sorry, only one deal per customer, your request is denied, Bob replied. No, Stacy yelled, as she stood from behind me, raised the gun, began to walk toward Bob, and fired 6 shots directly into his chest. Bob just stood there laughing. Gray smoke pouring from each gunshot wound. Bob then took 6 of his fingers, and put them in the holes. He began moving them in and out. Oh, squishy, he stated. Stacy just stood there, mouth wide open, gun to her side. So young, so pretty, so stupid, Bob said intensely. Not only did you kidnap my, well, let's say, business partner, you drugged him, restrained him, threatened him, interfered with my plan, but now you have ruined my perfectly good suit. I cannot let that pass, Bob said. Your time is up. Now. Stacy began to slowly walk backwards, shaking her head from side to side. Bob then raised his right arm, turned his hand palm up, as a ball of fire appeared in his palm. The ball of fire then shot quickly from his hand, and directly into Stacy's chest. I ducked down, in fear that the ball would hit me. Stacy then screamed, the most horrifying scream that I ever heard, as she suddenly burst into flames. I could feel the heat of the flames from where I sat. After a few seconds, the flames descended into the floor, and disappeared. The gun falling to the floor. Stacy was gone. Tony, who had sat there and remained silent through all of this, suddenly began to make a loud mumbling sound, and thrashed himself around in his chair, obviously, afraid for his own life. Bob then turned his head in Tony's direction, and said, easy, big boy, I'll deal with you shortly. Bob then began to levitate off the table, and float down to the floor, spreading his arms out like an airplane. That was cool as hell. Anyway, let's get you out of those restraints, Bob said to me. If anyone is going to torture you, it is going to be me, he said laughing. He then snapped his fingers, the duct tape disappeared, and I was free. I stood up and stretched, rubbing my wrists and ankles after doing so, then checked my pockets, to make sure my money was still there. Luckily, it was. After that, I just stood there. Bob then glided over to Tony. Tony's eyes then widened with fear. Now, as for you, Bob said to Tony, stand up. Bob then lifted his arm, as Tony simultaneously rose from his chair. His eyes fixated on Bob. Tony is about 6 feet 8 inches tall, and weighs at least 300 pounds. He is a large, extremely overweight man. He easily towered over Bob and his 5'5" self, give or take an inch or so. Anyway, I am going to give you the ability to speak once more, but I strongly advise you to choose your words wisely, Bob said. Tony shook his head nervously up and down. Bob then snapped his fingers, and Tony's mouth reappeared. Tony then bent over and began gasping for air, stood back up, and angrily stared at Bob. "Choose wisely," Bob said. After a few seconds, Tony mumbled, "Thank you. You are most welcome there, big boy," Bob replied, "and you are big. Now, it is my understanding that it was actually you who drugged my partner, is that so?" Bob asked. Tony's eyes then turned fearful again. "Answer me," Bob said. "Yes, but she made me do it. She was really mean. I don't wanna hurt nobody," Tony replied. "I know, big man," Bob said. "I don't wanna die," Tony said, almost crying. "Fear not, big man. I'm not going to hurt you. I want to make a deal with you," Bob stated. "My name's Tony." "What kind of deal?" Tony asked. "Well, it seems to me that you will now be looking for a new source of income. That's where I come in. I will make all your financial troubles disappear, for the next 7 years, in exchange for you protecting him," pointing at me, "and the rest of the band." "Like a bodyguard?" Tony asked. "Yes, you see I have many tasks to perform down in hell. I won't always have time to watch over them. That's where you come in. Do we have a deal?" Bob asked. Tony then looked at me, looked at Bob, then back to me. "I'm sorry for drugging you, Mike," he said. "It's okay, man. You were only following orders," I replied. "Yeah," he said. "Can I keep my soul?" Tony asked Bob. "Of course, Tony," Bob replied. "What do I tell my wife?" Tony asked. "Tell her that you got a job, working for Hellfire Records, as a bodyguard for a rock and roll band." "It's the truth," Bob replied. "Okay, I can do that. Deal, devil guy," Tony said. "Wonderful," Bob stated, "but, please, call me Bob." Bob then looked at me, and said, "Now, let's get you back to your friends."